Hi, welcome to Stories from My Drinking Days. My name is Harry Fell and I'm the founder of No-Lo Cocktails and Bars. And today we are joined by Brooke Bownes, who is an accredited trauma coach, therapist and global #1 best-selling author. She works with midlife women who struggle with mother wounds, inner child wounds and childhood trauma. So let's start the conversation, Brooke, with obviously we're talking about stories from my drinking days. So when did you start drinking alcohol yourself?
I was probably in my teens. Alcohol wasn't a big thing in my family. My mum was quite a drinker, but my dad wasn't. He was a farmer and he worked long hours, and he was kind of like my hero. So I kind of took all my cues from him. So he drank occasionally, so that's what I did as well. So, but it was never a big thing that kind of really affected my life. Thankfully, a lot of people have been through the trauma I have. I know it's been affected them in lots of different ways, but I think because when my mum drank, she was quite more violent and more angry. So I didn't want to go down that road and thinking I don't want to be like her. So it was, something that I would drink occasionally, but it wasn't a big major factor in my life. And the fact as well, I think because I grew up on a farm and driving was a very important factor. So the two obviously didn't match together. So it was a thing that I did on very social occasions if I wasn't driving.
Yeah. And is that a pattern that's kind of continued throughout your life?
Yeah, if I'm driving anywhere, I never drink. And again, I live out in the country. I live 20 minutes from the nearest town, so we have to kind of like drive to get to most places. So, and I'm often the designated driver because I'm quite happy to jump on a table and dance, drinking orange juice and have fun. So.
I always think that's quite a talent, actually. Sort of, a lot of people drink, don't they, to lose their inhibitions. But if you can do it without the alcohol, that's even better.
Yeah, if somebody just dares me to do something, I don't need alcohol to be to fuel it. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So really, you've been a mindful drinker then your whole life, which
Yes,
is a really healthy way to deal with alcohol, but something that a lot of people don't manage really. And I think you've seen that in your work, haven't you?
absolutely, yes.
So tell us a little bit about what you do, first of all, and then we'll discuss sort of like how you've seen alcohol being misused.
Yeah, I help people with their childhood trauma and their inner child wounds. And obviously, when people have had childhood trauma and they've got inner child wounds, one way of dealing with it, handling with it, is to drink to kind of block out the feelings because they don't feel good about themselves. So I've had lots of clients that have, would come home from work and the first thing they do is grab for that bottle of wine. I've made it through today, and they've kept going through the day, which was a lot of effort to do because a lot of people have had childhood trauma will be walking around going, yeah, I'm fine, putting on this mask of being fine, but underneath feeling absolutely like they're dying, that they're not good enough, they're not worthy, they're not important, or they're not lovable. So that when they get home, it's like, oh, I need something to kind of like, help me get through the evening and to sort of like to celebrate the fact that they've made it through another day.
Yeah. So do you think that obviously with the alcohol that people are using it to block out memories of their childhood, or is it, as you just said, that they're just celebrating the fact they've got through another day and they've survived?
Both really, because drinking it is like how I work is we've got us as our true self, we've got our inner child, and then we have what we call protector parts, and these protector parts come in when they feel that our inner child doesn't feel safe or doesn't feel worthy or good enough. And alcohol and addiction is a protector part, even though it doesn't always have a good outcome, it comes with good intentions. So it's like to help you to cope with that, because when we've got inner child wounds, they can feel very, very painful. So to block out that pain can like soothe yourself and help yourself to manage to get through the week, get through the day. So it's a way of sort of like, as you say, sort of like blocking out those feelings, because it hurts too much to feel and remember those feelings from being a child and not feeling like they're good enough or feeling like they're loved.
Yeah. So for somebody that has a drinking problem as a result of childhood trauma, how do you deal with that then in your work? What do you take your clients through to help them heal that trauma?
I work a lot with what I call somatically in the body, and help them to reprogram their self and how they feel about themselves and reparent themselves. So we do a lot of work with their inner child. We connect them with their inner child and find out how their inner child's feeling, and find out what their inner child wants, so the inner child can feel loved now and feel good enough now, so those wounds can start to heal. So once those wounds have healed, then the reason for wanting to drink all the time will get less and less over time. And I also do a thing called brain spotting, which, if anybody's heard of EMDR, it's like a EMDR on steroids. It's an amazing tool to actually help people to release their trauma without having to like relive the trauma again. It kind of, because it's worked with the eye position, and the eyes are connected to the part of the brain where the trauma is stored, that it kind of like opens the door to the trauma and releases it, so people can then move on and live the life that they want to live. I mean, another big one is like emotional eating. That's like an addiction as well. And people will eat and eat and eat and eat because they're trying to fill that void that feels empty, because they don't feel loved or don't feel good enough. And that's the same when people drink. They're trying to feel like an empty void. They know logically that it's not good for them and they don't want to necessarily drink anymore, but they've got that feeling from the body, and our bodies kind of like lead the way, because the minute our bodies react, it sends a signal to our subconscious mind to say whether we're safe or not. So if you're feeling really apprehensive about something or anxious, and your body reacts, and it could be a slight movement like a sharp intake of breath, or your heart might start beating faster, or your palms might start going sweaty, that sends a signal to our subconscious mind to say, there's danger, we're not safe. So these protective parts will come in. And obviously, if you're having an issue with drink, it will be that addiction to drink, and it will come in to stop you from doing the thing that you were going to do. And the protective parts come in to keep you small and keep you safe. And if they can stop you doing it, it's like tick, job done for them, even though that the outcome isn't always a good, favorable outcome, because obviously, having a problem with alcohol can cause all sorts of issues with our health, and physical and mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it can be really damaging and cause, I guess, further problems for people. So you've talked about an inner child. That's not really something that I'm massively familiar with. Can you just tell us, what do you mean by we've all got an inner child?
Yeah. So when we're growing up, how our inner child feels is very important. Now, if you're growing up in a family that recognizes your feelings and allows you to feel and allows you to be who you are, you grow up feeling that you're good enough, that you're lovable, that you're worthy, and you're important. But if you've gone through childhood trauma, often your feelings aren't recognized and validated. So you grow up feeling not good enough, not worthy, not lovable or important. And these can affect us in our adult life, because even as an adult, our inner child will be directing us and telling us how we feel, because it's like a scratch that never gets kind of itched, because an itch that never gets scratched, get it the right way around, because whatever we do in life, we will take it back to, well, I'm not good enough because when I was 6, when I tried to do something, nobody recognized that or validated it. And it's how we felt as a child that we carry on through our adult lives. So if we were validated, we were loved, and our feelings were understood, and we were heard and seen, we have a completely different outlook in our life as an adult. And what I help people do is to help them to heal their inner child, so they do feel good enough, they do feel loved, so they can do the things that they want to do as an adult. Because often adults with inner child wounds will think, oh, I'd love to do that, but I'm not good enough, or they'll self-sabotage, or they'll be a big people pleaser. So they would do things that actually harm them more than help them. But they can't help it, because it's that inner child that's trying to hide, because they don't feel good enough and don't feel worthy, so that it's too scary to get out there. Like when I first started my journey, my coach said to me, go and do a Facebook Live on your personal profile. And I suddenly went, oh my goodness. And I was like, because to me, if I spoke out, I would be in trouble. Now, logically, I knew I wasn't going to be in trouble. I'd got the skills and the knowledge, but my body, because I hadn't healed it, or I hadn't healed my inner child, was going, no, that's dangerous, that's not safe. And I procrastinated so bad that to the point of, everybody's got that kitchen drawer that's a bit of a mess with an odd paper clip in and a pen top and a elastic band. I even tidied that up before I did my Facebook Live, because I thought that needs to be done, so that's really important. But that was my procrastination part coming in to protect me, to keep me safe, because it thought if I spoke out I would get into trouble, and my inner child couldn't deal with that because that would be too painful. So my procrastinating part came in with all good intentions, stopping me from doing that Facebook Live, even though logically I knew I'd got the skills and knowledge and I was completely safe sat in my own home on a computer doing a Facebook Live.
Yeah. I can completely understand the procrastination. I'm very good at procrastinating, and I think lots of us feel really self-conscious, don't we, doing Facebook Lives and all of that. I hear a lot of people saying that they hate them and they don't want to do them, and
well, it's not a natural thing to talk to yourself on the camera, is it? So to start with, that's not a natural thing to do. So, but yeah, I mean, now I do them without even kind of thinking about them, and I jump on podcasts and have chats with people. But 10 years ago, somebody just said to me, come and do a podcast, Eve, and I'd be like, oh no, I can't possibly do that. What will people think of me? I'm not good enough to do that. Who's going to want to listen to me? And all those thoughts from my childhood would have come rushing in, and my protector part of procrastination and self-sabotage would have come in, and I wouldn't have done any of it.
Yeah. So a lot of what you're talking about almost sounds like imposter syndrome. So do you think people with imposter syndrome have unhealed childhood trauma then? A lot of them, that is the feelings of not being good enough to do things. We all know, we might be educated, we might have done all the work, but that feeling of not being as good as the other person you see doing what you want to do. Do you think a lot of that comes from?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can remember as a child wanting to go and do something, and my mother was saying, stop showing off, you're getting too big for your boots, it'll end in tears. So it's like, okay, if I go and step out and do something, I'm just being a show off and nobody's going to like me and nobody's going to love me. And for the thought of people not wanting to like or love me would stop me in my tracks, because I couldn't bear that thought of being rejected, because I was rejected so much as a child. Just to let you know a little bit of my background, my mother's a narcissist, so every day I would hear from her that I wasn't good enough, that nobody would ever love me, that she thought I was ugly, I'd never amount to anything. So I grew up hearing those things all the time. So it's a belief system that we get often from our parents who have got their own inner child wounds they don't feel good enough. So if you often heard your parents say, don't do that, what will people think? It's because their inner child wound of not feeling good enough as a parent is being triggered. And so they want you to behave so people think that they're a good enough parent. So trauma can go back 7 generations. So it's realizing that the stories that you've got running through your mind at the moment and through your body is often from your parents and from your grandparents and from your great grandparents that are just passed down. So what I help my clients to do is get them to sort of kind of stop and think, where do you want to be? What's holding you back? What's stopping you? And asking those people what they want to do, where they want to be, and actually getting them to change their beliefs and their thought process so they can move on. Because now I know that I'm not ugly, that I am good enough, and people do want to hear what I've got to say, and I can be something, because I've wrote a book, I've collaborated on another book, I've got a successful business, I've got I've had children, I've got grandchildren, I've got a lovely family. So all the stories that my mother told me daily as a child aren't true, but they were her thoughts, because narcissists have even deeper inner child wounds than everybody else put together. They're very scared and very insecure. So if you had a narcissistic parent, it's their own childhood wounds that they try and project onto you, because they're too painful for them to deal with. So it's understanding where it's all come from and thinking, okay, where do I want to go from here? What beliefs in my life serve me and what don't? And I often use the example of, when we were growing up, we were on a water meter, and every time I went to brush my teeth, I could hear my dad saying to me, turn the tap off when you're brushing your teeth, instead of just letting the tap run. And now as an adult, I live in a house where I've got a water meter. So every time I brush my teeth, I can't let the tap run, because I've got my dad voice saying, turn it off, we need to save the water, which is a good thing, because obviously it helps me save on my water bill. So that belief is a really good one. But the other belief I got from my mother, like, nobody ever cares about what you've got to say, stop showing off, stop, being visible, stop being out there, because what will people think of you? I've had to really change that direction and change that story that I've been telling myself on a daily basis, because people do want to hear what I've got to say. People do want to have that knowledge and information and understand. Hence why I'm on your podcast here, to help people understand that, if they've got an issue with drink, it's because the childhood trauma they had and their inner child wounds, and they can heal from it. They can get better and live the life that they really want to live.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So obviously you mainly work with midlife women. Is there a particular reason that's the group of people that you work with?
I think because I'm a midlife woman, and it's like when the children kind of move out of home and you kind of think, who am I? Because often women with childhood trauma, when they have their own children, I think, right, my children are going to have an amazing childhood, a lot better than what I've had. So they focus all their energy on giving their children a good life, but they don't think about themselves. So when the children leave home, they suddenly think, well, who am I? What do I want in my life? And I want them to realize that they can have a life what they want to have. It's not just about being, little Joe's mum or, so-and-so's partner. It's actually, who is Brooke, and that's a question I ask myself, like, who am I? I'm not just somebody's mum. I'm not just somebody's partner. And it's realizing that you can have the things that you want to have and do the things you want to do, regardless of what's happened in the past. If you've got a family, I deal with a lot of people that are like doctors and lawyers and professional people. If their family have all been doctors and lawyers, they've become doctors and lawyers, but maybe they wanted to be, an artist or run their own business, or a musician, whatever. So, well, there's no reason that you can't do that now. And it's that realization that they can be who they want to be and live the life that they want to live without feeling guilty, because obviously a lot of families put peer pressure on people. Oh, no, you have to keep, being a doctor, a lawyer. You have to be whatever it is that the family's always done. And I often hear women say to me, well, my family's always done it this way, which is fine. But does that serve you now? Because what served your grandmother, your great grandmother, doesn't necessarily help you in this day and age. So it's like getting women to look at their lives and thinking, actually, what is feeling good for me in my life and what isn't, and adapting it so that you have more things in your life that feel good about and doing the things you want to do.
Yeah. And I'm guessing it's never too late to do this work, is it?
Absolutely not. No, I've got clients in their 60s and their 70s that are doing this work.
Yeah. I always say it's, whilst in a way with lots of things, whether it's this or, getting onto the housing ladder, the best time may have been 10 years ago, but the second best time is now.
Absolutely.
So, and the only time it's ever too late is when you're dead. So
yes.
Brilliant. So obviously you're looking to help midlife women to heal their inner child, but have you got any advice for parents? So with regards to, the ways to avoid passing these things on to their own children?
Yeah, the first thing I want to caveat, because I get asked this question a lot, being a parent, you're guaranteed to mess it up, because children don't come with manuals. So kind of let go of the guilt of like, am I going to do it wrong? Yes, sometimes you're going to shout and you're going to be tired and you're irritable. But the main thing with children is that they need to be seen and they need to be heard, and to feel that they're loved and listened to and validated. And I'll give you an example of that. In March, when it was my birthday, I had like an open house, because I've got 4 children, 9 grandchildren. So it's quite a big to do when we all get together. And my little granddaughter, who was 4, went home before we cut the cake, because people were coming in and out all day. She woke up the next day absolutely sobbing, saying to her mum, I didn't get a bit of grandma's cake. Now to us it's like, oh, well, it's just a bit of cake, we could say, yeah, don't worry about it. But to her, at that particular moment, that was her whole world, that she didn't get a bit of grandma's birthday cake. So my daughter phoned me up and said, just to let you know, Bella is absolutely devastated she didn't get a bit of your cake. So I got on the phone to Bella and said, look, I'm coming over, because it was my other grandson's birthday that day. I said, I'm coming over to see you when you come to Tyler's birthday. I'll bring you a bit of my cakes to make sure that you have that bit of cake. And she just went, "Thank you, Grandma. I feel so much better." And she went off and played then. But, I know that's kind of an example that things are exaggerated, but it brings home the point that whatever's happening in your child's life, that's a big part of their life. That's their whole world, So if they've lost their favorite, blue pencil, actually, validate that and say to that child, "I'm really sorry. Let's see if we can look for it together," or whatever you want to do. I understand that you're really upset about that, and it's okay to be upset, and validate their feelings. If they're angry, if they're sad, if they're crying, validate that, because a lot of parents, when they see their children cry, what they want to do is make them feel better instantly, which sends a signal to their children that it's not okay to have that feeling of feeling sad and crying, because it's absolutely okay, because crying is a natural way of us processing things that have happened. And if you can let your child cry, then they can process that what's happened, so it doesn't turn into a trauma, because the trauma isn't the event that happens, it's how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about the event afterwards that turns it into a trauma. So it's realizing that. So if my daughter just said to my granddaughter, "Oh, stop being silly about that cake," she wouldn't have been validated and listened to. But because my daughter and I both validated my granddaughter, it won't be an issue. So if I say to her when she's 20, "Do you remember that time that you didn't get a bit of Grandma's birthday cake?" She won't have been traumatized about it and probably won't even remember it. But it's that sort of thing. It's understanding that children, just because they're little, doesn't mean to say that they haven't got big feelings, and validating them, because at the end of the day, they are still a person as well. So it's just, and we get it wrong sometimes. Like, I get it. I've got 4 children. There's only 5.5 years between my 4 children. So my my children's childhood was quite busy, and sometimes I got angry and sometimes I got upset. But when you get angry and get upset because you're tired or frustrated, also acknowledge that with your children and apologize to them, saying, "I was angry because this," or "I was angry because I was tired," or whatever happened. Let them know the reasons why, and say sorry to them, because if not, they just think, "Okay, I can't speak to Mum because she'll just get angry and I don't know what to do." And so it's really understanding that their feelings are just as important as ours.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think actually children's feelings can be bigger. They feel very big to them because they're very little, and they don't have the experience that we all have, having lived for longer, do they? So,
and they don't understand sometimes why they're feeling what they're feeling. And if you can say to them, "Yeah, I understand that you're nervous, but obviously it's going back to school now, nervous about going back to school," and saying to them, "I felt nervous when I went to school." So let them know it's okay to feel those feelings you're feeling, because we are meant to express our feelings, not suppress them. But when we start suppressing them, that's when the issues happens. That's when the childhood trauma happens. That's when the inner child wounds appear. That's when we end up with autoimmune diseases. Our bodies are not at ease because we've suppressed all these feelings and emotions, and they have to come out somewhere. So they often come out in our bodies in aches and pains, and in like IBS, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune diseases, back pain. I have so many clients that when they first come to me have got terrible shoulder ache, neck ache, which causes headaches because of how they're holding themselves. And once we start to work on their inner child wounds so they can start to relax, I help them to learn, teach them how their body can relax. Their shoulder ache goes, their neck ache goes, and they don't have the headaches anymore. And it's all because of us suppressing our feelings. So if we can let our children express their feelings, they're less likely to have those inner child wounds and be able to deal with whatever comes, and they'll have that resilience to deal with things, even when traumatic things happen in their lives.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I definitely completely agree. They need to be seen and heard and know that they are loved. So I think those are the main things that we can do for our children, really. Far more important than, taking them on fancy holidays. But although fancy holidays are good as well, if you can do it. So you've got a challenge starting next week, is that right?
I have. It's a free 3-day boot camp, easy to say, and it's all about heal your inner child, heal you. and there's a separate Facebook group for it and everything. So if anybody would like to come along and join, I'll send you the link so you can put it in the show notes below. It's going to be very interactive, and there's going to be little tasks for you to do, and it's great because with a free Facebook group, everybody kind of like shares their things and people bond really, really quickly. So I run one every January and every September, so I absolutely love doing those. So if anybody wants to come along, they're more than welcome.
Excellent. Right, so I will put those in the show notes for everybody. And also, Brooke's offering that if anyone wants a complimentary call with Brooke, you can email her at brooke@brookebownes.com. And you're also on LinkedIn if people want to connect with you there, and on Facebook as well. Are those the best places to contact you, Brooke?
Yes. I'm mainly on Facebook. So they can either email me, like I said, at brooke@brookebownes.com, or send me a friend request or message me on Facebook.
Excellent. That's brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much for your time, Brooke. It's been really interesting chatting with you all about our inner child, and I've certainly learned a lot today. So thank you so much. So that's it from Stories from My Drinking Days for this week, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.